Welcome to a special edition of the Christy Taylor Show. And today's guest is not only a phenomenal playwright and founder of Hattiloo Theatre, he is a personal friend. So this conversation may go off the rails, but I promise you, we're going to make sure we get to the point. Just a little about this amazing man. In 2006, Ekundayo Bandele founded Hattiloo Theatre in Memphis. And each year he organizes and produces a season of 6 to 8 productions, which have featured film and television stars. And of course, we celebrate the fact that from 2012 to 2014, he was able to raise $4.3 million that resulted in the construction of Hattiloo's 14,000 square foot venue that opened debt free. In addition to that, he is the founding member of various organizations. And I told him I was not going to read it all because, as he says, it's a lot. It's a lot. First of all, though, hi, Ekundayo.
Hey, you know what? Your opening with the countdown and the bubbles and all of that. You know what? I swear, I was like, I should look up under my chair like Oprah. I might have a gift up under here.
There you go.
I'm like, what?
Come on, you get a card. You get a card.
No.
Okay. More importantly, you get a pair of season tickets to Hattiloo Theatre. All right now. Wow, Morehouse.
Yeah, Morehouse.
Oh, it's so much, Ekundayo, that we can talk about and should talk about and could talk about. I know that you told me, before we went live that you're doing a paper. I mean, you're a true Morehouse man.
African Diaspora 1900 course.
Ooh. Yeah. You're in my wheelhouse. Oh my God.
Oh,
there we go. You got love in the house.
That's my girl.
Yes,
Mary.
honey, Maryology. Don't play with her. Hey, Mary. Thank you, Mary. That countdown. Y'all loving the countdown?
Loving it. Oh my God, it was for real.
Well, first of all, Ekundayo Bandele. Okay. Can we run it back to the 90s when I came back home from Detroit and I was trying to find my tribe, and I landed over at the Firehouse. That is the Memphis Black Arts Alliance Firehouse over there in South Memphis. And you were one of the amazing souls that I had the pleasure of meeting in this creative circle. Benny Nelson West, we thank her forever for making that space available. But do you remember those years?
I remember. You know what? Because in the downstairs part where they had the mirrors and the bar, it wasn't a theater. And we had those little folding seats. And we put up a little curtain, if you remember. And I can't remember everybody, but of course.
I remember Lurland because she did your set design. TC Carson, Wendy Oliver, who's now really old.
TC Sharp. Yeah,
Wendy Oliver. And because I remember this one, and was this the first one, the ghost of a soapbox?
The ghost of a soapbox artiste.
And y'all built the heck out of that set. And you had me as diva.
Oh my God.
I wish you could restage that because I just remember it was so deep.
Well, you know what? I don't think any of you all knew this, but I wrote that play in a response to my father's passing.
No, I didn't know.
Do you remember there was that scene? There was a scene there about someone with cancer and all of that. That was my dad's scene.
Wow.
Yeah, and I found a more clear voice after his passing. Though I did not grow up with my father in the house, I knew that he loved me. And in his last days, we got a lot closer. But that piece, and that was the magic and remains the magic of the Firehouse, and remains the magic of our community, especially the Black arts community that we had back then.
Yes.
Because it really did not depend on your genre, whether or
we were so unhinged.
you know,
Michelle Montgomery, Gabrielle Kenyatta,
yes.
Ekpay would
Oh my
come.
God.
Voices of Fire. Look. Friday
We
nights,
were
Saturday nights when we would do things. Yeah.
Precious Cargo.
Precious. Oh, and then when she
That was our Mecca. I mean, you know.
I was driving down North Main the other day, and I was like, and I just looked at the building, and you can see, and I'm like, oh my God, it's so much magic because you can still see the faded Precious Cargo signage.
Yeah, that purple, yes.
So
that was our heyday. I mean, of course, Memphis Black Arts Community, they're in their heyday now. They have their tribe. And many of us, like you and I, have really dug into our gifts.
Yeah.
And while we're not connected like we were back then, we remain connected.
Yeah, we remain connected. I do get a chance to, Darius Fat Mac Clayton. Mac. I'll go to some of his stuff. Like I went one Wednesday because they're down now at the Carolina Watershed. Of course, when he would have the Den, which was formerly Hattiloo Theatre. I lived in that place because, of course, there's so many memories. Because let's get to that. When you graduated, let's say from the Firehouse, and you started on your path in the late 90s to the early 2000s, little did we know that you were going to end up erecting a theater, because you were doing like a lot of playwrights, finding venues around the space. Tell me about your path, Ekundayo, first of all, as a playwright and then as a theater.
Yeah. Okay. So as a playwright, I'm going to be succinct because you know what, these stories are long, and shameless plug, I got a website, ekundayobandele.com.
Yes.
You really learn these stories.
Yes.
But there's this cat at Tennessee State named Dr. James Birdsong who introduced me to theater. And so after I left there in Memphis, of course, I was hustling plays. So renting spaces, doing shows. But you remember, I was also doing spoken word nights.
Yes, you were. Yes.
And you remember the one that I had on Hewling called The Speakeasy?
Yes. That was a brief moment. That was a brief one.
It was brief, and here's why it was brief. I met this cat there, this white guy named Michael Dekatani, who knew about my playwriting background and asked me if I was interested in opening a Black theater.
Shut it up.
That was 2005. That was the summer of 2005. And he helped me get everything together. There were board members. Commissioner Van Turner was a founding board member. Cardale Oren, he's still on the board, was a founding board member. So Paige Beverly Walkup. So there were all these people. So he planted the seed in 2005. We opened in 2006 in that space over on Marshall.
That was the house. That was the house.
And it grew slowly at first.
Yeah.
And the impetus that I think really accelerated our growth was when I established what's called the Trust Us subscription. And let me tell you why. It wasn't because of the savings. It was because I understood that there was a vacuum of understanding of what Black theater is in Memphis.
Right.
So it didn't matter if I was doing the Big Rabbit's Foot in Overton Park. People wouldn't have known, right? So I was like, I had to mix in acculturation, education, and entertainment.
Right.
And then once I started doing that, the mission accelerated. And then there were people like yourself. I mean, Black artists just kind of, coalesced on this vision.
Yeah.
And the foundation that it set led to the Capitol campaign, which led to the construction of the building in Overton Square.
The years that you're talking about, I was from 1999 to 2009 for that decade while you were in that lane, because it's almost like we all, went our separate ways by the end of the 90s into the early 2000s. Lurleen Franklin, who was also a part of that time, and Wendy Oliver, who became Wendy O, and Ekpay as well, all the things that everybody was doing. I was deep in radio. So I would see your news articles, or I would see a news report, and I'm like, what can I even do it? And I was like, when I found out about Marshall, I was like, oh my God, I got to go over there. And, you know, and a lot of people just knew me as a radio personality and did not understand that I was like just feeding off of, because you came also around the time Precious Cargo had started fading. And then the Black Repertory Theater that had been housed, I think, at Evergreen.
It was at Playhouse. It was at Playhouse Evergreen. It was a subsidiary of Playhouse on the Square.
Right.
I think after a little while,
it faded.
Years,
yeah. So then there was a void, and then the poetic scene had subsided, because, you know, there's ebbs and flow. If you really understand the poetry scene in Memphis, it's really been around since the 60s and 70s, but there's been deep valleys and high mountain peaks when it comes to that poetic scene. And of course it had ebbed. And then when you started with the theater, it started making sense, like, okay, we're going to get some respectability added to this in a house that we built. And I remember at one point coming to Hattiloo Theater, and you were literally doing construction.
Yeah. I know. Oh my God. But you know what? It was those Precious Cargo days that gave us that ambition, gave us that bravery, because in this community, we were supporting one another to such an extent. We all believed that we could fly within our particular genre, because that support was so strong and deep. And I think we all owe, you know, a debt of gratitude to our community.
Yeah.
And to places like Sidewalk University Books.
Oh my God, yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know, and to Frank D when they were doing the what was that?
This Is It Jazz Club, to when Ephraim started his art village in
that. I mean, all of that empowered us.
I will say that we definitely, as an art community in the 2000s, started putting legs to owning buildings, to having property, of being able to say we have a space, because we had been venue hopping for so long. And then we were like, let's take some of these areas. Like, you were in the Edge District before it was an Ed District. I mean, Ephraim was in the South Main Art District before it was when it was still very scary to walk down the street.
You know what? I didn't think about that. You're right.
Yeah, so we were spurring, and Precious Cargo actually did, for those who don't know, is the reason why Pinch District got back on the map, because they had forsaken that area.
That was the only thing down there.
Yeah. So we, as Black artists, were sparking that. And so when I was away, at some point, my radio career had segued into film, and I had left. And then I heard when I came back home that you were about to get a $14 million building. I'm like, what happened?
$4 million.
I keep adding that extra 10, that $4 million building, and debt free. I was like, what did Ekundayo do? What happened? So how did you go from Marshall to basically the theater district? And
it was one person who lit the match, and that was businessman J.W. Gibson.
Yeah. Okay.
We were sitting across from one another in his office, and as easy as, hey, you want me to go get you a glass of water? He was like, hey, you want to build a new theater? Just like that. I mean, it wasn't any deep thinking and so on and so forth. And I had been thinking about it, but I hadn't really put it out there. And JW has so many relationships. And I had built my relationships. And both of us are very strong personalities, but we had a common goal.
Correct.
And it was JW, not me. It was JW that said, we aren't putting a shovel in the ground until we have every nickel in the bank.
Wow.
JW said that.
Okay.
And if you go to Hattiloo, you see that half wall in front, and you see JW and Kathy Gibson, their name on it. And not only is that because JW's effort, but it's also because he and his wife gave the lead gift, you know, a very large lead gift, which we were able to leverage against other places. Then there was other organizations. There was another person who was greatly instrumental in this, and that was Robert Lipscomb.
What?
And we don't talk about Robert Lipscomb anymore.
But he was really changing. He literally changed.
He did. He changed
the reign of Memphis.
And so, to make a long story short, Robert facilitated the land that we're on.
Oh,
So Robert,
what was on it?
it was nothing. It was a parking lot.
Okay.
You had Robert Lipscomb. You had then Councilman Shay Flynn, and then Councilman Jim Strickland.
Oh,
because that was their district.
Yes.
And they facilitated us getting the land. And when they, so it was a city, Mary is actually Mary Andrews, who was just in there. She in the newspaper article clapping a picture of her when we got the land from the city council. So the city council purchased the land for us.
Wow.
And I said they were going to transfer it to us. And I said, I don't want the land transferred to us. I want to lease it from the city for $1 a year for 100 years. And the reason we did that was because, one, we don't have to pay property taxes, because you pay property taxes on land, not home, right? And we own the building.
Understand.
So if the city ever 100 years from now, well, 85 years from now, if they say we don't want to renew your lease, well, they're going to have to purchase that building from Hattiloo.
Wow.
And so,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so JW, my board chair at the time was Carolyn Bishop. So yeah, there were a lot of ups and downs in raising this money and getting it, but it was a coalition, just like a coalition of artists helped establish it at Marshall and continuing to help it operate. There was just this wonderful group of funders and politicians, corporate people who helped build the theater.
Wow. And how was it for you to be, because there were some mixed emotions, I remember, among the creatives when you moved from Marshall to the theater district?
Well,
I just remember it was like, is he going to lose, Yeah,
there was that. And I mean, there was a lot of other negativity. There's still negativity, around me, my persona, and the building. In some instances.
Wait a minute. First of all, hold on. That's news to me. I mean, okay. Let me stop.
Yeah, but you know what?
I will say that as far as I know you from, we're talking since your 20s till now, that you are definitely a Memphian who does not buckle to the Memphis pressure.
I don't.
Yeah, and I can understand how. And
I think another thing is,
can you be extra? Can you be extra? Yes.
Yeah, and see, maybe that's part of it, and I think part of it too is the seats that I have at certain tables, which appear to be white tables. Oh, they are white tables, and on boards, on commissions, and things like that. And so sometimes, I used to always, not always, I used to equate, the Black community used to equate struggle with Blackness. Oh, and if you're not struggling, then you're not really black.
And that's two different things.
If you're successful, then you ain't really Black.
Yeah.
And so I dealt with a little bit of that. But back to your original point, there were people who were like, the thing they loved about Hattiloo and Marshall was that you would catch the sweat from the actors because you were so close. But if you notice, you go into our theater now and it's the exact same way. We did not lose the intimacy. And that was the number one thing, because we had even talked about making it a second floor balcony. Yeah. And we were like, no, because you'll lose the intimacy.
And you did succeed in that. And I love the fact that it was around 2016 or so, or when you ended up having the expansion.
Yeah. So right after we opened in 2014 in June, I got bored. And so I raised 1.1 million. And built the expansion, which is also debt free. Then I got bored again, and I raised 750,000. And so we own an artist triplex in Evergreen Historic District.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. It's Hattie House. Really, the only way you get there is by being a performer. Like we had, Elvin from the Cosby Show. He stayed there. So whenever we bring people in, that's where they stay. And it's a beautiful, beautiful space. And my whole thing was about owning outright.
Mhm.
And I actually will get in arguments sometimes with white institutions that are trying to lend us stuff.
Oh,
And I'm like, I don't want to borrow. I want to own. Where'd you buy it? That's
yeah,
where I want to go.
yeah.
You know, and
Now, why
so
is that something important for us to discuss? Because we're talking about, of course, we're going to be getting into the spotlight on wellness, but we're also now a spotlight on wealth, creative wealth.
Mhm.
Why were you committed to that? Because it's easy for a creative Black, Hispanic, European. If
Right,
somebody says, because we're never thinking the numbers,
right.
why was that important for you?
So the Memphis Black Arts Alliance will probably still be around. Not Memphis Black Arts Alliance, excuse me. The Memphis Black Repertory Theater would
Mhm.
probably still be around if they had their own building.
Understood.
You had
Yes.
Crossroads Theater in New Brunswick, New Jersey, who
Yeah.
won a Tony Award
Mhm.
and closed that same year. There are only 4 freestanding Black theaters in the entire country, and we're able to have self-determination. So
Understood.
even if our money just starts to dissipate, we can turn that mug into a church. We can turn it into whatever we want, pass the collection plate around and pay the utilities, because we own it. And
Yeah.
so self-determination has always been very important to me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm not going to give another person the opportunity to tell me no.
Well, to that point, you said the Memphis Black, Repertory Theater, but a Freudian slip was Memphis Black Arts Alliance. And to your point about self-determination, from which ground we grew,
Mhm.
they own the firehouse, and
Right.
they also, I later learned, own property in that community. So if expansion ever happens, it's land ownership. I mean, which of course is a bigger theme in Black culture, in Black families, in Black communities,
Yeah.
is our need in this century, in millennia, is to return to ownership and to,
Yeah.
like you said, self-determination. Now, with that being said, Black wealth is one thing, but and to that, I want to say too, shout out to your recent announcement about adding another property.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick, and then we're gonna get into this Black wealth
Okay.
and wellness.
So, I always pay props to, the individuals who make things happen, because a lot of things that happen through Hattiloo, I tell people I'm not that smart to make this thing happen. So the church was Rosalind Willis,
Okay.
who was the CEO of the Community Redevelopment Agency, which is responsible for developing communities around North Memphis and the Pinch District and Uptown and stuff. And so she and I have been looking for buildings because we're friends and we always daydream together. And we landed on this church, built in 1857. It was very much involved in the Civil War. And I was like, all these Confederate ghosts going to be chased up out of here with these Black folks. So,
You're gonna get your sage. You're gonna get your sage.
yeah, and so it's a partnership with the Community Redevelopment Agency, and it's going to be Hattiloo Theatre School. And there's definitely going to be some youth programming there, programming for the differently abled community and senior citizens. But it's also going to be a hub for collegiate matriculation, which is one of the reasons I'm at Morehouse, because I need my terminal degree to make certain things happen within the state of Tennessee.
Wow, that's a good segue to why you decided to go back to school. Let's dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah, well, Hattiloo is working on some programs in higher education.
Okay.
And right now, of course, with all of my experience, I could be adjunct.
Correct.
But working with the Board of Regents in the state of Tennessee and partnering with the Lemoyne College, I need that accreditation to make certain things happen at the level of legitimacy that is needed. And there's no other institution in the world that I would attend apart from Morehouse College. And yeah, you know, there's a certain level of excellence and stuff that is, you know, associated with, I am now a man of Morehouse. Everybody says you're a Morehouse man. No, I'm not a Morehouse man until I graduate. Right now, when you are matriculating, you're a man of Morehouse. The thing about being a man of Morehouse in this, you know, beloved institution, this is the only place on the earth where acculturation wraps around education specifically for men. Wow. So it's not just teaching you English or political science or mathematics. It's teaching it to you throughout an excellent Black gaze, and not only a Black gaze, but a Black male gaze. And so like today I came from Crown Forum, which we have every Thursday at King Chapel. And it's all about the empowerment of the Black man and his responsibility to the Black community. You know, Morehouse only talks about leadership and service. Wow. And excellence. Wow. And everything around this campus denotes excellence. It pushes you to excellence, even if you aren't thinking about being excellent. When you go into the post office, there's this big sign that says through these doors come the most important men in the world, or something like that.
And that's the post office.
That's the freaking post office.
Well, tell me now, Ekundayo, I saw, following you, of course, on social, and you recently posted I guess there was some type of commemoration and a guest speaker that you were lauding, but you also indicated that there was a Memphian that was in the house.
Yeah. So
there's a lot. And have you found out, since you became a man of Morehouse, how many Memphians are actually Morehouse men?
Oh, yeah. Well, Van Turner, Mayor Lee Harris, Dr. Charles McKinney at Rhodes, Bill, what's Bill's last name? Bill Jones at the airport, Douglas Scarborough at the Federal Reserve, Pastor Norman at First Baptist Broad, Pastor Whalum at the New Olivet. So all of these are Morehouse men. And if you really look at Spike Lee and Saul Williams and Maynard Jackson and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., of course, it's all about service.
Yes.
It's all about service. You know, you're constantly taught here that it isn't about you. It is about how do you serve your people.
Wow.
And that may translate into you being a leader.
Yeah.
But look at Mary.
Look at Mary. She said, "Yes, my pastor." Pastor Norman.
So I'm here.
And there's another pastor from Memphis that you spotted in the house.
So I'm sitting there at the rededication of King Chapel, and you got all these world-renowned pastors, and this pastor is speaking, one Morehouse alumnus. And I see this brother stand up like, I know that head. And I'm looking, but I ain't got my glasses on, right? So I'm like, okay, maybe that ain't him. And then maybe 30 seconds later, that head pops back up and it's got the kente. So I'm like, oh, it's just one brother I know that wear a robe like that. So I break out my phone, which you're not supposed to have out at King Chapel. And I text Reverend Dr. Earl Fisher. And I'm like, are you at Morehouse on stage? And he said, yep. And I'm like, I'm in the left audience, man. And I don't know if you see on my Facebook page, there's one picture of him in the crowd up on the stage doing that. Because I'm like, oh, and he looks and I'm like, oh my God. And Chrissy, I felt so proud that he was there. And not just there, but that he was being honored.
Right.
You know, for all the wonderful work, all the political and cultural and religious work he's doing in Memphis. Yes. I was just so proud to be in the audience.
To witness it, yes.
Witness it, and there I am able to applaud him.
Yes. Right? Now, of
And
course, I know a lot of that was because due to the pandemic, there were a lot of delays
Mhm.
that, caused that have to be done this year, which, of course, during the pandemic, you told me earlier that it actually sparked you even going back to school. So the pandemic and just this shift in human evolution has
Yeah.
pushed us forward. And
Yeah.
I like what you're saying about being a man of Morehouse. And then, of course, just the undergirding of leadership and service. So leading through the arts and specifically theater, because me and you be fighting about, because I'm all film, he's all theater, even though I have a theater degree.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I'm sucky now.
I
Okay.
know. I know, but my journey was,
Huh.
to television and film, to stay.
I'm not ignoring. I'm making a note because I need to remember
One
that.
thing you didn't know too, I think because radio really did take over my early years, is that Broadway was my greatest ambition. Because I was a music major first and then radio, and then eventually when I finally graduated, theater major. Yeah, with the whole film writing and consulting and all that. Yeah. So
Okay.
but with that being said, I know that you're leading in service and serving the Memphis community through theater.
Yes.
And one of the new ways I saw, and thank you for sending me all of the updates and the press releases. I really appreciate it because it keeps me plugged into what all the great things that Hattiloo Theatre is doing. And please go to his website, ladies and gentlemen, because they have new plays on the horizon. You definitely want to get your auditions in X, Y, and Z for the next season. But you're also, in addition to Black wealth and creative wealth, you have decided to serve us with a spotlight on wellness. And I was like, what Ekundayo doing now?
Well, so a couple of things. One, we had a COVID outbreak during our show for Again Best. And I was accused of not establishing a safe space. And so, can't let your ego get in the way of people's well-being. Then word got back to me that certain Black people in Memphis don't feel that there is a space for wellness among artists, right? Ooh. And so I was like, okay, I have the capacity to answer this. Right. And you have artists who use playwriting or painting or dance or singing for healing, for self-healing and healing of the community. And I was like, okay, let's break this down in its parts with the mind, the heart, the spirit, and then the practice of art for healing. Yeah. And that's what, that was the impetus for what we're doing this weekend. And of course, and I know you'll say this, but I'll preempt it, it's free because I never want cost to be a barrier or an excuse for individuals not participating. Now, you can say weather, you can say your transportation, you can say you ain't got a babysitter or a mama, whatever, but you're not going to be able to say, I don't have the money. Right. And it is my responsibility leading Hattiloo Theatre and in partnership with other individuals like yourself and, Marcellus, Kevin at, Collage, yes, to create an environment for Black artists specifically. Other people can come, but for Black artists to say, if you say something that is important to you and that resonates to other people, other Black artists, then it is my responsibility to create that platform. And what's interesting is that Mary Andrus, who's on
who's hanging out with us today,
and she's going to be the facilitator.
Okay.
Saturday. See, back to family, back to coalition. Yes. Mary has been with us since day one. Wow. And here she is. And she's one of those that, when we call up, it's automatically yes. Even though she's a sheriff's deputy and she's got a lot going on in her life, she still takes time for the members in her community, which is the Black arts community, and Hattiloo. Look,
Wow.
Ron won't work. She crazy. Yeah, because she did come in her uniform sometime.
Yes, yes, yeah.
We up on stage rehearsing. Gun on her head. I'm like, girl.
Wow. So, okay, let's break down what people can expect. Oh, behind the scene of Mahalia, yeah, all those things. What can they expect this weekend? You know, the who, what, when, where, and how of this Spotlight on Wellness.
All right. So, of course, the bios of everybody is on our website, hattiloo.org. But, the first one is about the body. And you have P.A. Bomani, who does this thing called Stretch Yoga Pilates, which he has created. It is a mixture of stretch, yoga, and Pilates.
Oh, wow.
And then you have this sister named Sanksa, who is big on nutrition and all types of dietary and meditation. So they're going to be talking about the wellness of the body. Now, I don't have this in front of me, so I may be mixing things up. So I'm not going to give the time periods. So when you talk about the wellness of the spirit, we got Reverend Dr. Rosalind Nichols, who I love.
We love her. Yeah.
You ain't never heard that woman preach.
Oh my God. You're missing a treat.
Oh my goodness. And then of course, Reverend Dr. Earl Fisher. So they're going to be talking. And see, the beautiful thing about the two of them, they not only can talk about spiritual healing and spiritual care, they are also specifically able to talk about spiritual healing and care within the Black person.
Yes. Right? The person who, yes.
So they're going to be talking about that. And then two people who are just really epitomizing wellness and health through art is Ann Wallace, who is part of Playback Memphis.
Yes.
They do, but they're not a Black organization, so I can't invite them, but I can invite her. Right. And so she epitomizes using theater to deal with trauma, to deal with all of those things. And then, of course, Beverly Edwards, who a lot of people don't know, but I know Beverly, and her whole artistic mission and vision is about health, wellness, and dealing with trauma. And so while Anne will be talking about how she uses theater, Beverly will be talking about how she uses art as a umbrella for illness. And then when you deal with the mind, you have Montoya Collins, who definitely deals with trauma in so many different ways. And then you have Dr. Gregory Washington. And so here's the beautiful thing about these individuals, right?
This is, first of all, can I say this is a stellar cast? If I have to say in the words of, that's a great combo.
Yeah. And the thing is where do you see these people in one space?
Yes.
It'll take you a year to go around and really experience, not hear, but experience these individuals. But the moment I called them or emailed them, they all said yes. There was no, let me get back to you. Yeah. There was no, let me check my calendar. Yes. And mind you, I put this together 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
3 weeks ago.
Wow.
And this shows, again, service.
Yes.
Everybody that is involved in this Saturday, including Mary Andrews, are people committed to service. Yes. I don't go to ego folk. Yeah. I don't go to people who just want to be seen and heard. I go to people who they don't even mind if their name isn't associated as long as they're able to change lives.
Right.
And everybody involved in this is in the business of changing lives.
And where can people get more information about this free event?
Hattiloo.org. And it is from 9 until 1. And there's food and snacks free. Because you're going to be there a long time, and we don't want to hear people's stomach grumbling around 12.
And my sugar low.
Exactly. Y'all got some orange juice? And so, Hattiloo.org or Facebook. They can go to Hattiloo's Facebook page. They can go to my Facebook page, scroll down, Earl, and I think I mentioned 2 new entries on my website, and then there's Spotlight on Wellness.
Wow. Ekundayo Bandele. Be sure to go to Hattiloo.org EkundayoBandele.com. Check out his Facebook, his Instagram, and if you're scrolling, checking out the ticker below the donation tickets URL is hattiloo.org/small-mighty-donor. Yeah, he's gonna make sure y'all support.
Yeah, because you know what? Again, how are we doing this free thing Saturday?
I know,
free
right?
ain't free. And a small mighty donor is $10 a month. And look at what your money will do.
Wow, for the community. We love you too, Mary. Awesome. Love you, love you, love you.
Love you too, girl.
Wow. So I really appreciate you, making time for, this announcement, because I really, when I saw that particular email, I'm like, oh my God, I want to wrap my head around it and understand, because I do understand as a creative how oftentimes we're not thinking about our vessel, our emotional state of mind. We absorb so much for our art and for our, creativity, that we don't know sometimes how to purge and free our souls and our body. So, honey, because I need some seaweed right about now. I need to go to Dr. Champion to give me some seaweed. I ain't never had, is it the seaweed or whatever they say?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so I need
that stuff. I know sea moss.
Sea moss. That's when everybody talking about sea moss. So I'm like, well, let me see how.
Yeah, there's this place around the corner from campus that sells it, and I keep thinking about I need to get.
Yeah, I want to try it. because they say it's good for your joints. And now that we're getting closer to the 6 and the O. I'm still in my 50s, but still, the body.
We up in there. We up in there. When I turned 50 last year, someone said, "So how you feel? Being 50?" I said, "I'm halfway done."
Ooh.
But no,
to that point, that's one reason why we know we have to put these things in place, because it's not 1999, it's not 1995 or 92. This is 30 years later, and we put in some good time, and I hope that we've both been of service to this community. I know we have, and that we'll continue to be of service.
That's right.
And thank you for your service in the world of theater.
Thank you.
I'm a theater.
We're going to talk about that.
I love you too. Yeah, I do want to act again. Let me recite some lines. Let me do something. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for checking us out. Be sure to share this video. This is a special edition of the Christy Taylor Show, and it's extra special because I had a chance to talk to someone who's special to me, Ekundayo Bandele, who I've known and loved in spite of all of his grandness. I love even the grandness.
Right there, it's mutual, because I see you all over the place. And I see you with your Oprah opening.
Well, let me get you.
I know you got it like that.
The page may God give me.
But seeing that, I was like, damn, I should have wore a tie.
well, may God give me the studio and the team so that I can be even more extra. And to this point, here's the outro, my love.